They're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. No, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine, all he does is build car manufacturing plants.
Some of you just saw that clip for the first time. Some of you have seen a very small portion of that clip because corporate media and the Democratic Party altered that clip so that they could lie to you about what Donald Trump said at a rally. In this clip, we're going to unpack Donald Trump's comments. We're going to get to the bottom of it, and we're going to expose those people that are liars, schemers, and hypocrites. I'm Tim Black, and this is Calling It Out.
Calling It Out with Tim Black.
All right, you back? Perfect. Now, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to play about 5 or 6 minutes of Donald Trump's speech. And we're going to watch it together because I want you to get a full understanding of how Trump's rolling when he does these speeches. Here goes Donald Trump in Ohio.
Is what they've done to their people is horrible. They want to do this all-electric nonsense where the cars don't go far, they cost too much, and they're all made in China. And the head of the United Auto Workers never probably shook hands with a Republican before. They're destroying. You know, Mexico has taken over a period of 30 years, 34% of the automobile manufacturing business in our country. Think of it. Went to Mexico. China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. No, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine, all he does is build car manufacturing plants. He's the biggest in the world. I mean, honestly, I joke about it. He can't walk across the street. In that way, he's like Biden. But for building a plant, he can do the greatest plants in the world, right? That's all he cares about. I said, I'd like to see one of your plants recently. I said, I'd like to see, where can we go? Well, we have to travel to Mexico. I said, why Mexico? He said, because that's where the big plants are building. China's building really big plants in Mexico, and Mexico's building. What about here? Well, we're building much smaller plants here. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? So what they're saying, Jim Jordan, is that we're going to make cars in Mexico, and they're going to do, you're not going to stand for that, Bernie? JD, I have a feeling JD's not big into that policy.
We just heard it, right? We know what he was talking about. He was talking about manufacturing. He said 34% of auto manufacturing has gone to Mexico over the last few years. 34%. He said that the car manufacturing plants, the big car manufacturing plants, have gone to Mexico and they're not hiring Americans. Well, because they're in Mexico, right? So if it's in Mexico, that's who's getting hired, right? I would assume. Whoever's living in Mexico, you got to live there in order to work there. So his thing is he wants to bring those jobs back to America. And if not, what he's going to do, well, you're not going to get around in China because China, the plants are owned by China. And they're doing the manufacturing in Mexico instead of the U.S. And they're avoiding, because we have an agreement with Mexico and Canada, right? But he said we're going to slap a tariff on those cars because we're going to say those are really coming from China, not just Mexico. Get what I'm saying? So he wants to put 100% tariff on those cars. It's important for you to pay attention to this because a lot of places that I listened to this, they were leaving out all of this. Yeah, they just jumped right to the bloodbath comment and made it about January 6th. The speech itself is an hour and a half. Now, being someone who's been smeared this way, when you give a talk, I gave a talk that was about 45 minutes, and they took pieces of it and made it seem like I was talking about just one thing, when I talked about several people and several things in an almost 45-minute long spiel. So I know exactly how this feels to be treated this way, which is kind of ironic because a lot of people say, well, you know, Trump's going to get the black vote because black people say they don't understand how Trump feels because they get messed with by the cops all the time. Well, I kind of know what it's like to get smeared and people go along with it and then people contribute to it because they don't like you. Well, that's sort of like what happens to Trump. I mean, once again, think for yourself. Does it sound like Trump's talking about auto manufacturing, or is he talking about if he don't get elected, he's going to have his people burn down the country and cause a civil war? I think it sounds like it's talking about auto manufacturing and the carnage of us losing jobs, even more jobs, to China or to Mexico and not making that money here by manufacturing these big plants, having big manufacturing plants for the automobile industry. I think it's pretty clear, man. I don't think, if you're operating in good faith anyway, I don't think you could pretend not to know what he was talking about. But nevertheless, people acted like they didn't understand what he meant. People acted like, oh my God, I got it. It sounds like he's talking about violence in the streets. Let me let them speak for themselves. Let's go over to The View and listen how the ladies at The View played it. Now remember, people always say, Tim Black, man, why do people watch The View? The View ain't relevant. The View is garbage. Nobody watches. Nobody should watch it. The truth is, a lot of people watch The View, yo. A lot of people. I think it's the #1 talk show during the daytime. It has been that way for like a decade. So, though you may not agree with it, I may not agree with it, the fact is a lot of Americans watch it and they trust it and they think it's honest. Well, here's what they said about that clip we just played.
But you know who was ranting at a rally in Ohio this weekend, which he kicked off with a tribute to the people he calls patriots. Take a look.
Please rise for the horribly and unfairly treated January 6th hostages.
You see the spirit from the hostages, and that's what they are, as hostages. If I had prisons that were teeming with MS-13 and all sorts of people that they've got to take care of for the next 50 years, right? Young people, they're in jail for years, if you call them people. I don't know if you call them people. In some cases, they're not people, in my opinion. These are bad. These are animals. We're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars.
So he says his bloodbath comment was referring to the auto industry. Now, I don't know if that's how y'all heard it, but that's not how it sounded to me. But what do you think about, do you care? Because he does this every week now. Every 3 or 4 days he says something outrageous and then we flock to talk about it.
Oh, look, let's be honest, guys. That clip, that's the way they ran that clip. Those cuts, they did that. You just saw me play it uncut. The first version, that's the clip anybody could get who goes to the actual speech. That's the version you're going to get. You're going to get him talking all that stuff. In fact, he says a lot more stuff. But you're going to hear the whole context of it. The View took it, they cut it up, they diced it up, They put it out to their people, and now they want to have a conversation about it. Knowing it's clipped, knowing the full context. I don't believe that The View didn't know that there was a larger clip. There's even flashes when they cut it to let the person watch and know it's cut. But most people don't know, most viewers at home won't know that's what those flashes mean. That means they cut it, and they cut it again, and they cut it again. It took different portions of the clip and put it together so that the context will be whatever whatever point they're trying to make. So what I'm trying to say is that what Whoopi's talking about is disingenuous. It's dishonest. It's deceptive. And it's a strategy. And it's intentional. This ain't an accident what they're trying to do. I mean, we could sit through Whoopi and Sonny and Joy, act as if this is the end of the world, and that Donald Trump is Hannibal Lecter. He's come to eat your kids. He's come to kill everybody. But you already know that's what they're going to say, right? You know, it's scare tactics. Let's play a little bit of it. I think Sonny is probably the most disingenuous. Her and Anna Navarro.
I do think it matters. So I know how Republican voters think, and the average person doesn't probably consume media and political media, especially as much as we do. And my worry is this. The BloodBath comment over the weekend was wall-to-wall coverage. And a lot of Republicans are going to see the headline and then see what he said and say, oh, wait, he's talking about auto workers. But what they won't hear is the other part that we played there. January 6 hostages, playing an alternative national anthem. That is so un-American.
Yo, but that's not so what? Who cares? I don't think it's un-American to make up whatever you want on your freaking mix of whatever. I mean, I probably wouldn't have done it, but nah, man, that's not a news cycle though. Oh, he's praising January 6 people. Yeah, obviously. That's not new. That's not news. What the news was the BloodBath thing. So I'm sure what she's going to do is she's going to destroy him, right? She's going to rip him up, give him a new asshole for lying to people. And she's also going to point out how it's dishonest and dangerous to put out a clip like this that totally misleads Americans about what Donald Trump said. Like, that's not cool to do in an election, to like mislead people and take people out of context to spin the story. Right, I'm sure she's going to mention that, right? Because that's only fair, right? Let's see.
Saying Liz Cheney and the January 6th committee should be in jail, and he doubled down on Fox News about immigrants poisoning the blood of America. I'm not saying it's a media trap because he does use language like bloodbath and carnage deliberately, but I don't want us to miss the forest through the trees of the truly dangerous stuff that he's saying, because that's what will sway this election.
Well, you know, for me, I will never stop caring. I cared the first minute, and I will continue caring the rest of my life, because I think we've learned that words matter. And, you know, it's really funny because you mentioned this.
If words matter, doesn't it matter that you let them stand on their own without you manipulating the words? I mean, if you just said words matter, right? If words matter, wouldn't it be only fair to let the words be delivered to the people in which the way they were spoken, so they're not taken out of context, so that you're not manipulating someone else's words because you just said words matter? I'm just saying, look how obviously like backwards and dishonest. And I think she's a Republican, but there's no difference. There's no difference between Democrats and Republicans when they're really just corporations. Corporate. That's it. They're in it for the money. That's all it's about. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about our kids, our families, our older parents, our babies. None of that. It's all about them and their jobs and their money and their own success and their greed and their ambition. Let's keep going.
Alternative national anthem. How ironic is it that Trump's is...
Let's go to the next person.
It happened in Buffalo. Well, believe him.
It scared me.
Listen to her. She's scared. Listen to Sonny. Sonny has been a prosecutor. If I'm not mistaken, she's handled very death cases, but this scares her. Someone talking about the automobile industry. Remember that. Remember that Sonny works in media. You don't think Sonny saw the real clip? Come on, man. Come on, Johnson. You know better than that. You know she saw the real clip. Let's listen to her.
It scared me. It scared me, honestly. You know, I didn't think ever in my lifetime I would see that.
She said she never thought she would see that. What have you seen, Sonny?
I've been watching this show called The New Look, and it goes over what designers were doing in Paris during World War II, during the Nazi occupation. And one character says to another, you know, we took all the things that the Jews had. We took their homes, we took their jewelry, we took all of those things.
Yo, what's this got to do with the comments? She's comparing Trump to Hitler, to Nazis. She really is, Joe. That's what she's doing. That's what she's doing. I'm telling you, man, this is why. They love saying, I don't know why people like Trump. It's not that they like Trump, they just hate you. Because you're horrible. Get what I'm saying? It's sort of like the way Biden got elected. Biden got elected because you demonized Trump. But what you also did by doing that is demonize yourselves by lying, deceiving, shaming, badgering, talking down to. All those things that you did turned you into another person. And that person is something that people detest. And out of them detesting that, they end up supporting Trump because he's the alternative to you. Let's keep going.
And now the next step is to dehumanize them, to make sure that they to show people that they have no soul, that they are not human. And he is using that kind of World War II rhetoric.
Lord have mercy. Okay. So he's using World War II rhetoric. I think she's talking about the earlier part of the clip when he was saying MS-13 on that human. MS-13 is a gang. Of course, he's saying it about all Latinos or all immigrants. I don't think he is. In fact, I think she knows he isn't. But the fact he said these people are not human, I think we know he's talking about the gang members who cut people up as part of what they do or whatever. I think she knows that, but of course, why be honest? She can just pretend he means every immigrant. Every immigrant should be, is not a human being. I don't think it's true. I think she's a bold-faced liar. And she's telling people that may not have access to the original clip, may not have time to look up the original clip, and she's scaring them with this type of talk, knowing better. So she's intentionally making people upset, messing with people's minds, playing with their emotions to get a vote, to get votes for a political party. I think it's disgusting. It's horrific is what it is. And it's what they do. All right, let's keep going, guys. I want to play another clip. I'm going to leave the view out. We done with the view. Let's go to David Pakman. Pakman used to be what some people call a progressive. Some people said, they'd say, oh, David Pakman is progressive. He used to pretend that he was. But in reality, this is who he always was. A person who just recently went to the White House, met Joe Biden, met Kamala Harris, and just had Don Lemon on his show, where he asked no tough questions and kept it all about defending the Democrats. This is going to be David Pakman, so never mention my name and David Pakman in the same sentence or same paragraph unless you're saying Tim can't stand David Pakman. Tim Black has no respect for David Pakman. Tim Black is nothing like David Pakman. That's where you put us. Tim has ethics. David Pakman does not. Tim Black has a code that he follows. David Pakman follows money. That's why David Pakman is a multimillionaire who tongue lashes the Democratic Party. So let's hear what else David Pakman, the sellout, has to say.
It's going to be a bloodbath for the country.
All right, let's get to the bloodbath scenario. Failed former President Donald Trump at this very same rally in Dayton, Ohio, threatening a bloodbath if he loses. Now, Trump was a little careful. He sort of framed it as it'll be a bloodbath for the auto industry. And that's the plausible deniability that his strongest and most sycophantic defenders are using to say this is no big deal.
Okay. David Pakman says, if we believe that Donald Trump was talking about the auto workers industry, the auto worker industry, automobiles, manufacturers, he says that we are sycophants and fanatics of Donald Trump. So he has no intention of showing his audience the truth. David Pakman's very happy to lie to them, to camouflage the truth, so that he can advance himself. He's a greedy, self-serving piece of shit, is what David Pakman is. It's just what it is, man. That's all it is. I can't stand these guys, man. They get to lie to the world, no one challenges them, and they let them just keep on going. Do you think someone like David Pakman gives a fuck about working people? Do you think he would ever take a haircut for the working people? Hell no. He's a propaganda, false narrative spreading, lying piece of Democrat Party liberal bullshit. That's what he is. That's what he supports. That's why he's rich. And they will continue to get rich off of us and continue lying to the fools that believe him because it's easier. It's easier that way. It's easier to accept Donald Trump's the only problem in America than to accept corporate media and all these other entities are lying to you. It's easier. All right, let's play a little bit more of Pakman, and then we're going to go to breaking points.
I don't get elected, it's going to be a...
Donald Trump at this very same rally in Dayton, Ohio, threatening a bloodbath if he loses. Now, Trump was a little careful. He sort of framed it as it'll be a bloodbath for the auto industry. And that's the plausible deniability that his strongest and most sycophantic defenders are using to say this is no big deal. But of course, we know Trump's history. We know Trump's inciting of a riot. We know Trump trying to steal the election. We know Trump's other threats. So the context in which Trump says this is a context in which he is known for inciting violence, and his followers know we should be paying attention because he might deputize us to violence once again. Here's Trump.
And you're not going to be able to sell those guys. If I get elected, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be...
Wow, this guy totally took all the context out. All of it. He truncated the whole fucking thing. Wow. Do you really think someone like David Pakman would ever stand up for working class people? We're not even going to even question what he'd do for the rest of us. But do you think David Pakman would ever stand up? That's what I want people to realize. That's what I want people to see. These people that are too cowardly to tell the truth, to go against their party, will never defend you, will never defend me, will never defend our kids, will never fight the good fight, will never go down with the ship, will never stand on anything. All they will do is do what's easier for them so they can build their wallet, so they can build up their bank accounts. That's it. That's all they will do. I believe what we're dealing with in America is too serious for people like David Pakman to have platforms that get to lie to us. That's what I believe. I believe what we're dealing with, what we're up against is too big. We cannot tolerate people like this. It's a goddamn shame, Johnson. Now, for my last bit of this, let's go to, now let's check out breaking points.
Anybody we've got in the country, these are hardened criminals. Mexico has taken over a period of 30 years, 34% of the automobile manufacturing business in our country. Think of it, went to Mexico. China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it.
All right, so Crystal, those were the two controversial things that Trump said. One of them he's actually said before. I remember when he said it whenever he was president. The other about the bloodbath comment, though, this is how some of our media outlets covered it. Let's go and put these up there on the screen. Here's the major takeaways. At least CNN, ironically, did end up writing it correctly. They say Trump warns of a bloodbath for the auto industry and the country if he loses the election. That's actually accurate. Politico, though, Trump says country faces bloodbath if Biden wins in November. New York Times, Trump says some migrants are not people and then predicts a bloodbath if he loses. NBC News, Trump says there will be a bloodbath if he loses the election. Bloodbath now being seized upon, even though it was clear, if you watch it, it's obviously in the context of the U.S. auto industry. Even the New York Times, only half of their headline correct. And, Ryan McGrim made a point on whenever he was following this. Trump, prior to going on stage, had talked about how he wants all of his people to snap to attention the way that they do in North Korea with Kim Jong-un. And Ryan was like, guys, he says enough actually crazy shit that you don't need to invent news cycles about the things that he said to go after him. But they were so desperate, for the bloodbath comment.
That's how I feel about it as well. Right. I mean, if you listen to the whole context, he throws in that thing at the end of and that'd be the least of it, which kind of muddles the comments and gives them a little bit of something to stand on of see, he's talking about the country as a whole. But obviously, if you're an ordinary person, you're reading those headlines, you hear Trump, says it's going to be a bloodbath. If he loses, you're thinking about January 6th, you're thinking about political violence. You're not assuming that he was, building up to this with this whole long rant about the auto industry and China taking our jobs, et cetera. So I do think that's very misleading. And, we played the comments that he just said about immigrants, which are horrifying and disgusting on their own. So when you mess around with the other comments that he made and you intentionally muddle the meaning of them, it gives you less credibility to talk about the things that he says that, in my opinion, really should be out of bounds, and just to address that directly. And I do think that watching what's unfolding in Gaza has made me perhaps more sensitive.
So I agree with Crystal and I agree with Sagar. And I'm glad to see that those guys haven't changed. I used to go on this show back in the day, and it's good to know that they have not become David Pakman, because believe me, there's money out there to become David Pakman. I don't know if I've seen Sagar and Crystal at the White House. Because if you're Sagar and Crystal and you're willing to call it straight, you don't get to go to the White House. Obviously, if you're Tim Black, that's not something you get to do. But if you're David Pakman and you will lie, you get to come on in, David. Come on over, David. Come on in here. We love a liar. So I think that what Crystal's saying is true. And I think that's where he is. So when Trump says things that are wrong and you ignore those and go after things he says that aren't wrong, I mean, he said 34% of auto manufacturing has been taken over by Mexico. And he says, and China wants to put their cars into America via Mexico and not have to pay any tax on it. That's that good. That's why people clap when he said he's going to stop that. They didn't clap when he said something about BloodBath. They clapped when he talked about the actual tariff on the cars and Americans getting those jobs or tariffs being on these cars. That's what they clap for. So as bad as people want to make Trump supporters be, you heard what the audience clapped at. You saw where they clapped. They clapped about the tariffs. They did not clap about the bloodbath comment. There are people that do not support Donald Trump. They don't support Donald Trump because of Donald Trump's policies. Some of them do. But some people don't. Some people support Donald Trump because they have such a disgusting feeling about the Democrats and the lying liberals and the people that smear and the people that do all these types of dirty tactics. I know in independent media, there's a number of people who were not fans or are not fans of Donald Trump, but they have gotten so tired of the lies and the deceit that they end up supporting them. Because what I'm seeing here, I can never support Biden. I can't support someone who would manipulate all of us, gaslight us, turn us against one another, just to try to, and I guess that's what Trump does too. See, that's the thing. They all do it. Both of these parties do it. But what I'm saying is, Trump's one guy. Trump is just one person. But we got all these different media entities who are playing a role in smearing him and lying. And then they're not just lying on Trump. And they're not just lying to Trump supporters. They're lying to the whole world. And they act as if they're the good guys. We're the good guys because we're lying for a good reason. We're the good guys because we're trying to save democracy. You can't save democracy by lying and stealing and scheming, duping and manipulating everyone else. That's not the way that you stand up for something. You stand up for something by being honest and real and ethical. See, they got it twisted. And then these same people, they want to shit on people for supporting Trump. Nah, man. I think supporting the Democratic Party is just as bad as supporting Trump, if not worse. I think if you're going to support a party that has their only goal is to lie as much as possible to try to stop the momentum of one guy who they can't find a way to beat. It's easy to beat Trump. All you got to do is offer something better than him. Offer to do things that are better than what he's offering. But instead, what they do is, because they don't want to do that, because they don't want to give us health care, they only want to help 10% of the people with student debt, and they don't even want to clear it all. Just take away 10 grand of the debt. When we got people with 100 grand worth of student debt, they want to take off 10 grand of that and just say, look what we did. Look how great we are. 41% of black businesses closed down because of Joe Biden. He shut them down. What's Joe Biden going to do about that? What's he going to do about all those black businesses that went away? Well, I guess if he offered a way to help make those businesses be able to rebuild, that would go a long way into helping Trump be defeated. But see, that would cost money. You wouldn't be able to send all this money to Ukraine. You wouldn't be able to send all this money to Israel. You wouldn't have been able to spend all that money on those electric car battery chargers all across the country. Get what I'm saying? And some people may have actually benefited in their lives if you did it another way. But see, they're not trying to really defeat Trump if it's going to cost them to help us. Get what I'm saying? I really believe the Democratic Party is fine with losing to Trump as long as they ain't got to give too much to the American people. And that's a horrible thing. That is a disgusting thing. Why isn't Biden talking about forcing China to pay a tariff if they want to try to export their cars into America? not sneaking around our backs, paying Mexico to make the cars, employing Mexicans or people in Mexico, and then having those cars come through our back door, using Mexico's relationship with America so they can avoid paying taxes. Why isn't Biden saying, hey, I'm going to stop that? Why isn't that a talking point for the Biden campaign? Instead, what they'd rather do is say Trump is the devil, he's evil, and we got to stop him and save democracy. And if you vote for him, especially if you're black, if you vote for him, you are betraying people. You're betraying your community. You are selling out. No, I think both parties are horrible. That's what I think. I believe both of these parties are garbage. Both of these parties suck. And I'm going to tell you something else. I want to play something for you. Before you leave, I'm going to play something for you that I don't think anybody played. This is important. This is the original speech that Donald Trump gave. But I want to get to a part where Donald Trump talks about the Republican Party.
Is what they've done to their people is horrible. They want to do this all-electric nonsense where the cars... South Carolina, they can, using American workers, they can. They can't send Chinese workers over here, which they sometimes do. But if they want to do that, we're welcome. And I'll tell them, if they want to build a plant in Michigan, in Ohio, in South Carolina, they can, using American workers, they can. They can't send Chinese workers over here, which they sometimes do. But if they want to do that, we're welcome, right? But they're not going to build them in Mexico, and they're not going to do that. We're going to tariff them at 100%, just like I've done. I saved the steel industry. The people that like me the most are the steel companies. But now I've been out for a little while, and guess what? United States Steel, 50 years, 60 years ago, maybe the greatest company in the world, was just sold to Japan. How do you like that? U.S. Steel, owned and controlled by Japan. I wouldn't have allowed it to happen. Hopefully they won't allow it to happen. When I'm president, we will end this Biden betrayal of the African-American community. We will stop the theft of American jobs and protesting and all of the things. We have to protest. We have no choice. Today, people that protest get arrested in this country. We never had that before. They can rip down Portland. They can rip down Minneapolis, and they can do whatever the hell they want, and nothing happens. If a Republican or a Christian, frankly, and what's happening with the Catholics? The Catholics are under siege. Any Catholic that votes for this numbskull is crazy, because you are being persecuted. Now I'm being persecuted, I think, more than anybody, but who the hell knows? All my life, you've heard of Andrew Jackson. He was actually a great general and a very good president. They say that he was persecuted as president more than anybody else. Second was Abraham.
Trump is all over the place in his speeches. He's all over the place. He's everything. He's saying all types of stuff. But keep listening, because he's going to get to a part. The Catholics. Trump is the most persecuted person in America. But I'm going to keep going. Check it out. It's coming up soon. He's going to say something that I want you to hear.
Abraham Lincoln. This is just what they said. This is in the history books. They were brutal. Andrew Jackson's wife actually died over it, they say. Died of a broken heart, but she died over it. He was never quite the same. But they say Andrew Jackson. They say Abraham Lincoln was second, but he had in all fairness, he did have a civil war, so you would think that would cause a problem, right? So you could understand it. But nobody comes close to Trump. And now even the wonderful historians, the fake historians they have in CNN, you ever see these guys? Biden makes a State of the Union speech, one of the worst speeches anybody here has ever heard. And at CNN, they said that was one of the greatest speeches I've ever heard. That was one of the great, MSNBC, a bunch of fakes. They go, that was one of the greatest speeches I've ever heard. You know that CNN turned off here we are. We campaigned for a year, and I obliterate my competition, And they said, sir, please don't talk about these people that way. They're Republicans. I said, I don't give a shit. They're terrible. I said, I don't care. No, my highly paid advisors, sir, you shouldn't talk to them about that. One of the people said, they said, are you going to run against the president? He said, I have no comment. To me, that meant he's running. So I hit him hard. I hit him low. I hit him high, just like we did to ISIS. We hit him hard. We hit him low. We hit him high. We hit him in the middle. We hit him from on top, and we even came under the ground. We hit this guy so hard, by the time he announced, nobody knew what the hell happened. They said, what?
Trump is crazy. The man is a crazy man. But he makes some good points. And he did something in that speech that I never heard, you will never hear Biden do. You never hear Biden say that he will go after another Democrat. See what I'm saying? Trump said, hey, I went after this guy, and they were like, don't do that, he's a Republican. He said, I don't give a shit. The Democratic Party is about the Democratic Party. And those members of that party, none of them have that attitude. None of them. I have never heard them say that. I've never heard a Democrat say, I don't give a shit, I'm going after this Democrat because this Democrat is wrong. For whatever reason. That's something that these people will never admit. That Trump is not liked by the Republican Party. Can't say that about Biden. He's loved by the Democrats' party. Biden is loved by the Democratic Party. So was Obama. So was Clinton. See, Trump is not loved by the Republican Party. And he's willing to go after the Republican Party too. See, that's a difference. And that's something that appeals to Trump supporters. And I think that's an important point to make. No one makes that point. And if they do, I haven't heard it. But in that speech that they're talking about, Trump said that and no one talked about it. I wonder why they didn't. Let me know what you think in the comments section. There's one good thing that came out of this smear of Donald Trump and this whole bloodbath situation is you know who you can trust and who you can't trust.